girl. So before we start, Kazia, can you take a look at the cover, and who do you think this book is about?
Native Americans.
Oh yeah, I think you're right, because she has a feather in her hair and she looks like a Native American. And Gretchen, can you see what our vocabulary word is in here? Charred? Can you see something that might be charred in the book? Oh yeah, her face is kind of charred. I wonder why. And let's get started. Once, long ago, there was a village by the shores of Lake Ontario. Off from the other wigwams of this village stood one great, huge wigwam. Painted on its sides were pictures of the sun, moon, stars, plants, trees, and animals. And inside this wigwam, there was said to live a very great, rich, powerful, and supposedly handsome invisible being. However, no one could see him except his sister, who lived there too. Many women wanted to marry this invisible being, but his sister said, only the one who can see him can marry him. Gretchen, can you show me a wigwam in this picture? Good job. Now, in this village, there lived a poor man who had 3 daughters. The 2 older daughters were cruel and hard-hearted, and they made their youngest sister sit by the fire and feed the flames. When the burning branches popped, the sparks fell on her. In time, her hands became burnt and scarred. Her arms, too, became burned and scarred, rough and scarred. Even her face was marked by the fire, and her beautiful long black hair hung ragged and charred. And those 2 older sisters laughed at her, saying, "Ha! You're ugly, you rough-faced girl." And they made her life very lonely and miserable indeed. Gretchen, if you're looking at cruel and miserable, which one of these characters on this page are cruel, mean for no reason? Oh yeah, they kind of look cruel because their eyes are angry. Mm-hmm. And which one of these characters might be miserable or really sad for no reason?
Her.
Oh yeah, I think I agree. And Kazia, how would you feel if you were the rough-faced girl?
I would feel very sad and lonely.
Why would you feel sad and lonely?
Because others were making fun of me.
Yeah, I think so. I think I would feel that way too. One day, these two older sisters went to their father and said, "Father, give us some necklaces. Give us some new buckskin dresses. Give us some pretty beaded moccasins. We're going to marry the invisible being." So their father gave them these things. Dressed in their finest, the 2 girls marched through the village. All the people pointed and stared. "Look at those beautiful girls," they said. "Surely they shall marry the invisible being." And if those 2 girls were proud and hard-hearted before, they were even prouder now. They walked haughtily through the village. At last they came to the wigwam of the invisible being, and there was his sister waiting. Kazia, how would you describe the older sisters?
Proud and confident.
Yeah, I think so. And Gretchen, can you find the moccasins? Yeah, those are moccasins. Can you see who is proud in the book? They're so proud. They're feeling very good about themselves. So I see a man here, and I see these characters, and I see this character. Which one is proud? Oh yeah, I think you're right. You guys probably agree on that too. "Why have you come?" she asked. "We want to marry the invisible being," they answered. "That's why we're here." "If you want to marry my brother," she replied, "you have to have seen him. Tell me, have you seen the invisible being?" "Of course we've seen him," they insisted. "Can you see how pretty we are? Can't you see the beautiful clothes we wear? Oh yes, anyone can tell that we've truly seen the invisible being." "All right," she said quietly. "If you think you've seen him, then tell me, what's his bow made of?" And suddenly her voice was swift as lightning and strong as thunder. "His bow?" they stammered in surprise. "His bow? We know." But turning desperately to one another, they whispered, "What shall we say? Let's say it's an oak tree, they said together. It's the great oak tree. No, said the sister of the invisible being. No. Oh, she saw at once how they lied. Tell me, she continued, if you think you've seen my brother, the invisible being, then what's the rudder of his sled made of? We know, cried the two sisters. But whispering feverishly again, they wondered, what shall we say? What shall we say? Let's say that it's the green willow branch. No, said the sister when she heard. No, you have not seen my brother. Now go home. Just test us fairly, they exclaimed. We've seen him. Just don't ask us all these silly questions. Gretchen, if you look at this text, we're talking about the word stammering, which is when you stammer because you're kind of afraid. Can you find, this is an example of stammering. Eraser. Can you find in this text where someone's stammering?
Bow.
Yeah, that's right. His bow. And then Kazia, how do you know the sister of the invisible being is angry with the two older sisters?
Because she's yelling at them.
Yeah, her voice is strong like thunder, I think. All right, said the sister of the invisible being, come with me. She took them back to the great wigwam and sat them in the seats furthest from the entrance, the guest seats. Soon, they heard footsteps coming along the path. Then something stepped inside. Though they heard breathing, the two sisters couldn't see a thing. Suddenly, a great bow and a beaded quiver of arrows appeared in the air and were set down. But though the two girls sat there and their eyes wide all through that night, they never saw a thing more. And in the morning, they had to go home ashamed. So, Gretchen, ashamed. Ashamed is when you're feeling sad or embarrassed because of something that you've done. And your face kind of looks like, oh, can you see in here who is ashamed?
Her.
Yeah, the two sisters are ashamed of themselves. Kazia, do the older sisters really see the invisible being?
No.
Why do you think that they lied?
Because they were ashamed.
They were ashamed. And then, Gretchen, which character might be invisible, if you can tell? Invisible is kind of when something's there, but you can't see it. Yeah, that one's kind of a tough one. Invisible is kind of tough. But yeah, because the bow and the quiver of arrows are there, but someone's supposed to be holding them, but we don't see them. The next day, the rough-faced girl went to her father and said, Father, may I please have some beads? May I please have a new buckskin dress and some pretty moccasins? I'm going to marry the invisible being, for wherever I look, I see his face. But her father sighed. Daughter, he said, I'm sorry. I have no beads left for you, only some little broken shells. I have no buckskin dress, and as for the moccasins, all I have left are my own old, worn, cracked, and stretched out pair from last year, and they're much too big. But she said, whatever you can spare, I can use. So he gave her these things. So Kazia, how is the rough-faced girl's tone different than her older sisters when she asked her father for help?
She's very respectful and
Yeah.
soft.
Yeah, I agree, she's nice, because if we look back over here, when the girls asked their father, they said, Father, give us some necklaces, give us some buckskin dresses. And then here, she said, Father, may I please? So you're right, that's pretty respectful. She then found dried reeds and, taking the little broken shell, she strung a necklace. She stripped birch bark from the dead trees and made a cap, dress, and leggings. Then, with a sharp piece of bone, she carved in the bark pictures of the sun, moon, stars, plants, trees, and animals. She went down to the lake shore and soaked the moccasins in the water until they grew soft. Then she molded them to her feet. They were still too big, and they flapped, 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 like a duck's feet as she walked. Then all the people came out of their wigwams. They pointed and stared. Look at that ugly girl, they laughed. Look at her strange clothes. "Hey, hey, hey, go home, you ugly girl. You'll never marry the invisible being." But the rough-faced girl had faith in herself, and she had courage. She did not turn back. She kept walking through the village. So courage is when we're brave, even when we're scared. So even when we don't feel that great, we're feeling brave. Gretchen, can you find someone a character that shows courage? Because I see this character pointing, this one walking, this one kind of coming out of the wigwam, and this one shouting. Which one is showing courage?
The girl.
Yeah, because she's walking even though people are yelling at her. Kazia, when the rough-faced girl was walking through the village, how did people treat her?
They were very mean and rude to her.
They yelled at her and screamed. And then Gretchen, we found moccasins before, but can you find the soaked moccasins, the moccasins that are wet?
Here.
Yep, and they go flip, flop, flat, all through like a duck, because they're wet. As she walked, she saw the great beauty of the earth and sky spreading before her. And truly, she alone, of all in that village, saw these things, the sweet yet awesome face. In all these things, the sweet and awesome face of the invisible being. Can you guys see it? It's a little face, so cute. At last she came to the lake shore, just as the sun was sinking beyond the hill, and the many stars came glittering out like a fiery veil in the darkening sky overhead. And there, standing by the water's edge, was the sister and the invisible being, waiting. Now the sister and the invisible being was a wise woman. When she looked at you, she didn't see just your face or your hair or clothes. No. When she looked at you, she would look you right in the eyes, and she could see all the way down to your heart. And she could tell if you had a good, kind heart or a cold, hard, and cruel one. And when she looked at the rough-faced girl, she saw at once that though her skin was scarred and her hair burnt, her clothes strange, she had a beautiful, kind heart. And so she welcomed her dearly, saying, "Ah, my sister, why have you come?" And the rough-faced girl replied, "I have come to marry the invisible being." So Gretchen, when you're looking at this sister, do you think the sister's being cruel? Is she being mean without reason, or is she being gentle, very kind?
Gentle.
Yeah, I think she's being gentle, and even her hands are open, like she wants to be gentle. And Kazia, did the invisible being's sister judge people by their clothes?
No, just by their heart.
That's right, she could see all the way down to your heart. Oh, I skipped. Oh, okay. I didn't skip the page. "Ah," said the sister very gently now, "if you want to marry him, you have to have seen him. Tell me, have you seen my brother, the invisible being?" And the rough-faced girl said, "Yes." "All right then," said the sister. "If you have seen him, tell me, what's his bow made out of?" And the rough-faced girl said, "His bow? Why, it's the great curve of the rainbow." "Ah," exclaimed the sister in excitement. "Tell me," she asked, "if you have seen my brother, the invisible being, what's the runner of his sled made of?" And the rough-faced girl looked up into the night sky and said, "The runner of his sled? Why, it's the spirit road, the Milky Way of stars that spreads across the sky." So the runner of the sled is kind of where you hold on to the sled, just so you guys know. "Ah," cried the sister in wonder and delight, "you have seen him. Come with me." And taking the rough-faced girl by the hand, she led him back to the great wigwam and sat her in the seat next to the entrance, the wife's seat. Then they heard footsteps coming along the path, closer and closer. The entrance flap of the wigwam lifted up, and in stepped the invisible being. And when he saw her sitting there, he said, "At last we have been found out." Then smiling kindly, he added, "And oh, my sister, but she is beautiful." And his sister said, "Yes." Kazia, what is different about where the sister sat, the rough-faced girl in the wigwam versus the sisters, if you can remember? If not, we can go back too. So I'll read this page again, well, not the whole page, but right here it says, she took them back to the great wigwam and sat them in the seats furthest from the entrance, the guest seats. And then here she sat her next,
And the wife.
yeah, she sat next to the wife. So, do you think that she is going to get to marry the invisible being?
Yes.
The sister of the invisible being then gave the rough-faced girl the finest of buckskin robes and a necklace of perfect shells. Now bathe in the lake, she said, and dress in these. So the rough-faced girl bathed in the waters of the lake. Suddenly all the scars vanished from her body. Her skin grew smooth again, and her beautiful black hair grew in long and glossy as a raven's wings. That's a tongue twister. Now anyone could see that she was indeed beautiful. But the invisible being and his sister had seen that from the start. Kazia, was the rough-faced girl always beautiful?
Yes, she was, because her soul was always beautiful.
She had a good heart. Then at last the rough-faced girl and the invisible being were married. They lived together in great gladness and were never parted. The end. Great job, guys. Thank you.